Welcome to Artspace, Sholo TV's window on the art scene in the White Mountains of Arizona. I'm your host, Steve Taylor, and this is my co-host, Barbara Bruce. How are you doing, Barbara?
I'm doing great.
Good. Well, I'll tell you what, Valentine's Day coming up pretty quick. Folks, don't forget to get something for your sweetheart. You think about that, Ron?
I am thinking about that.
Yeah. We're happy to have Ron Hildreth with us today. Fantastic photographer. You're going to love what he does.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, this could even be a Valentine's gift.
Yeah, I would say.
And I want to remind everyone, I'm with the White Mountain Independent, and I know that you used to be with the Independent.
For 23 years.
Yes, exactly. And this show will be followed up with an article in the Independent.
All right.
So I'm excited about that.
Good. Yeah.
You know, talking about Valentine's Day, really, always people would give, in my day, Ron, they would give a picture of themselves to their loved one. But I looked at your website, which is done very well, I might add.
Thank you.
And I can tell you, you have some wonderful pictures. And the thing that is different about you that I recognized is that you take photography to a new level. You have used some of the new technology to enhance your pictures. And when I heard the word Photoshop years ago, I thought, what is that? What in the world is it? But life or pictures today are more than Photoshop, aren't they?
Oh yes, yeah, it goes way beyond Photoshop. The photographer, it's a confrontation with the subject, whether it be nature or a person or a subject or an old barn, and it's at that instant, just a fraction of a second, where it's immortalized, you know.
I look at the sunsets and the stars around here. We have many, many beautiful landscapes, but I looked at some of your work and you have enhanced it in such a way that it doesn't even really look like that image that we would see with our naked eye. What do you do?
Well, let me go back to Ansel Adams. He coined the term pre-visualization, and in his mind's eye, he knew what he wanted. From his heart, he knew what he wanted, but it took trial and trial, and he would use colored filters with his black and white photography.
Oh, yeah.
It wouldn't work. Green didn't work. Yellow didn't work. Finally, the red one worked. And so he had pre-visualized what he wanted. And Jerry Uelsmann, he was post-visualization. He would take thousands and thousands of negatives, and then he would superimpose those on maybe 8 different enlargers, and he would print one at a time, so that you got that library without the ceiling, with a little person walking on a desk, and that was post-visualization. I combined the two. I call it recreation using Photoshop. But you can't expect a miracle of a photograph. If it didn't take you, then don't take it. And there are too many people just snapping and taking, and there's nothing wrong with commemorating baptisms and Easters and Christmases and whatever, you know, the seasons as souvenirs of the occasion. That's great. And the selfies, you know, that everybody's taking pictures of themselves to document where they are. But when you want a classic photograph, an image that will take, you know, stand the test of time, become a classic, it must take you. You have to have the spirit and that energy. Then once you get the raw form, then you can take that into your computer, and then you can start embellishing or tweaking, enhancing, changing hues and colors. And everything that you can do in the old days, like in a darkroom, you can do more with a computer. Ansel Adams was a pianist. I think you knew that.
Yeah.
And I remember showing my class a movie that he did. He was playing Moonlight Sonata in the background, and his black and white images were in this room with his grand piano, you know. But he said a negative is like the score of music, to be interpreted many different ways. And he gave his negatives to the U of A at the Terrence Pitts Center for the Arts, so that advanced students could take his negatives and interpret them. Well, now because of technology and digital photography and Photoshop, the photographer, the photographic artist, can take those raw images, and once they're in the computer, they can actually start to create what was in the heart, perhaps when they saw that picture.
You know, as I listen to you, I
that's
think
amazing.
back. Yeah, I think back when the first camera that I ever had was a Brownie Star Flash. You probably don't remember that. I was a Girl Scout. We all
I
had to
remember
have
having
one.
a little Brownie when I was a kid. Yeah, yeah, a little. Yeah, it was about that big, you know.
Well, it
little
was
square,
different in
kinda
those
square
days.
thing, yeah.
Yes, it was very square. Today, you mentioned that almost anybody can take a picture. We do it with our cell phones. And some things we want to remember. I know I took one this last week to try to show my sister a package in the store that I needed her to buy for my father. So in that regards, it's really something neat, but I'm going to delete that. I don't want to keep that. There are things that I want to keep, but today it's more than that. There are things that we actually want to put on our walls, things that we really appreciate. And as I listen to you speak, and this is the month of love, it's Valentine's month, I could really almost tell that you have a love affair with whatever it is that you're taking the picture of.
Well, for me, photography is an art, but it's also therapy. And my wife and I, because I was a school teacher and the only breadwinner in the family for years, so we took up wedding photography to supplement our income. And I can deal with weddings and people and grandparents and all of the clans, but when I'm one-on-one with nature, you know, that's where the therapy kicks in.
I see.
And when you see that sunset or that sunrise, and for me, personally, I know the Creator. And it means maybe more to me than someone else because I know who painted that sunrise.
Amen.
But here's my little trick. If it's a sunset, I always say it's a sunrise because more people see sunsets than sunrises. They sleep through the morning and they're not going to get the sunrise. So if I title it Sunrise, oh, whoa, did you see what you get if you get up early? You know what I mean?
You know, thinking about that first photo that you take and then what you do afterwards to get it to the shape that you want it to be in. If you don't take a good composition the first time, you've got nothing to work with. And what I'm looking at here are great compositions. You know, when you see something that has everything in the right place to where it draws your eye into it, is that what draws you to that particular image?
The difference between painters, say, and you're a painter, and a photographer, you can paint what you want when you want.
Yeah.
You can paint the sunrise at 10 o'clock at night.
Sure.
But in photography, everything is connected. It's tied in to the negative or to that digital image. And so you're right. If you want a sunrise, you can't paint. You have to be there early in the morning.
Right.
The fog, the water, the fall colors, the leaves on rocks with that blurry waterfall. You have to be there, and you create it in time with nature. You know, so Ed Weston was a photographer that saved the Big Sur, you know, and around the California coast. And he was noted for having strong compositions. And they asked him, what is good composition? And he says, it's just the strongest way of seeing something.
Yeah.
But that's a decision that photographers have to make.
Yeah.
Because we have to think, what do we include? What do we leave out? What do we want? And not just the elements of the picture, but also perspective.
Right.
And you know, perspective, the wide angle effect or the compressing with telephoto lenses. And sometimes to make a photograph more appealing to people, when you take it in a perspective that they don't see with the human eye. See, we see with about 48 degrees. You know, but when you shoot a picture at 24 degrees, 24 millimeter lens, it's very wide. The perspective's different, and it creates an interest. And I laugh at some of the people on Facebook who have a new profile picture. They've taken it themselves, and they look like Jimmy Cricket. You know, the wide angle effect, like in a doorknob. They're all distorted and they're all wide angle. And
their nose is this big.
And they think that's really good when they should have somebody step back a little bit, zoom in, and so that their face and the background is compressed a little bit. They'll look so much nicer.
I'm not into selfies anyway. Are you, Steve?
No, I'm not wanting to take any pictures of this, folks, I'll tell you.
But you know, I appreciate what you're doing, and people like to come and look at art, and when they go to the Arts Alliance, the Center for the Arts, for example, I notice they move things around on a regular basis, so we don't see the same thing all the time, so that when we walk in the door, that through our own eye, we get to see something different, maybe something we haven't seen before. And I find more and more people really paying attention to photography today. And you're being an Arts Alliance member, you know that it's important to support the arts. And that's why we're here.
Yep.
In fact, last time we were laughing because Steve and I both have done it, and I know Lisa Jane said the same thing. We didn't say art space, we said artscape, because really and truly, as I listen to other people in the community, they often say that too, because you're looking at the landscape, if you will, of whatever it is that has caught the eye of the person that is creating the art.
It can be landscape, it can be nature, but it also can be an antiquity. Capistrano, San Juan Capistrano, you know, and 200 years old. And you get there and you see the antiquity and you want to record the arches and the beams and the texture.
It's a memory.
And, the memories, you record that. But I try to record that in the most artistic way. You know, today, everybody's taking pictures with their phones. That's great. That's one of the best things that's happened. And you can't find a slide projector anymore, you know, to produce
I've got one because I've got 1,000 slides.
You need to digitize those.
This is so exciting. I know that people have learned a lot. They've learned something different that they didn't know from your perspective. Give us your website so people can find out more about you.
Well, it's ronhildrethphotography.com.
That's pretty easy.
That's pretty easy.
Yep.
Thank you for being our guest today.
Well, thank you for having me.
And you have your work at the
Art Alliance?
Yeah,
The White
the
Mountains?
Arts Alliance
Sure do.
Center for the Arts.
And we'll be right back. And welcome back to Artspace, the window on the art scene in the White Mountains of Arizona. I'm your host, Barbara Bruce, and my co-host is Steve Taylor.
Here we are.
We are back, and one of the things that we wanted to be able to let our viewers know is that art is not maybe what you would think. In fact, last time that we were on, I found a definition that I really liked. It said, the various branches of creative activity such as painting, music, literature, and dance. And you notice it said literature, which is really going to be a segue into what we're doing today. And it's other things. It's performance. So many people do different things, and at the Arts Alliance of the White Mountain, the Center for the Arts, people come and perform. They have all kind of wonderful things. Oh, yeah.
Groups and
It's all art. And I think you have a wonderful quote that you're going to share with us.
Well, I would argue with Will about this a little bit, but Will Rogers had a saying that if you can't be nothing else, you can be an artist, because it's the only thing you can do that nobody can prove that you ain't. And so anyway, and I think we've seen some work like that, but not on this show.
Not on this show.
No.
And we have beautiful work.
Amen.
And writing is important. You know, a lot of people think that they have one or two books inside of themselves, and Sherry McGuinn is one of those people, and she knows about self-publishing. I know that there are many people out there that want to write that book. We all think we're going to write the great American novel. Journalism is really my background, and I always thought that that's what I would do, and I haven't done it yet. But if I want to do it, you have to first figure out why you want to do it. It could be just to finally do it, to say you've written that book, or it could be a memento for your family, or it could be that you'd like to sell more than just the 500 books that people usually sell. Is that right?
In fact, usually most books sell less than 500 copies.
Oh, how sad.
It is. It is. I have been very excited that my first novel, Running Away, has sold over 500 copies.
All right.
Some of them to Africa and the UK, thanks to the internet. But most books don't sell that many. And I am writing a new book. I wrote one, Self-Publishing for Schools, after we did a $7 yearbook at McNary. And I am now working on self-publishing for fun and family. And the first thing I say is most authors, including the ones with traditional publishing houses, most of them keep their day jobs.
Oh, and you know, I read that there's about 300,000 books that are actually put out every year. And lately, what I've been saying, and you know more about this than Steve or I do, but if you make it to Amazon, you think you've made it when you see your name up there, because you know it can go on Kindle, it can, you know, go just about anywhere, and you think, I'm on Amazon.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful.
You're on Amazon.
I am on Amazon. You can go to Amazon and Google Sherry McGuinn, and it will show you my author page with all of my books there, and a little blurb, picture of me on the top of Why New Pichu and stuff. It is wonderful, but it does not sell books all by itself, because that 300,000 is how many books were self-published last year. It does not count all the books published by traditional publishing houses or all the books that are published other places in the world. And we're in a world market now. Like I said, I've sold books in the UK and Africa. Well, people in the UK sell books here too.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Well, you know, to do it for family, I think you've really hit on something, because a lot of us want to get those things published, and usually it's cost prohibitive.
Oh yes, back in the day they called it vanity publishing, because you really had to be vain to do this. It was when there was only offset printing, and offset printing is very expensive up front, so you have to print at least 1,000 copies for it to be affordable. Well, we said books only sell 500 copies maybe, and you would have people end up with boxes and boxes of books, and that is not only costly, it is depressing. You know?
Now we,
so,
yeah, and we understand why people have given us books for Christmas and birthday and so forth that they self-publish, because they have all of these to get rid of.
Yes, I actually, my first edition of Running Away, I did through one of those companies that are out there strictly to make money off of writers. They sell writers big, expensive packages, and they don't sell books. What they do is they convince the author to buy a whole bunch of books, as if it were still offset printing, when it isn't anymore. And I went with one of those companies at first, because the company I now use did not exist yet. And I actually took about 2 or 3 dozen of those books up to the landfill to have them turned into mulch this year. Because I rewrote it with a better cover. I fixed errors that they had left in my book. So,
And you thought they were going to proofread.
oh, I paid for editing. And Carol Sletton looked at the review. It wasn't just me being, you know, a whiny author. She looked at it and she had read the book, and she said, they didn't read the book. It's the person that was editing it. So what I recommend for schools and for individuals who want to publish is going with CreateSpace. It's a division of Amazon, and your book does go on Amazon if you want it to. Now, the yearbook for McNary, we set it up so that only the school could buy that book, because we didn't want to have weird people buying books with their kids' pictures in them.
And please note that Steve is writing this down. We're going to be hearing from him.
Yes. They started publishing books for self-publishers in 2008, and they've gone from about 10,000 then to well over 100,000 now. And they are head and shoulders above the next company in numbers and in quality of service, because the really cool thing is you get a nice book, it's got a real binding, you know, it doesn't fall apart. You can do color. And if you are not trying to sell through distributors like Barnes & Noble and stuff, a color book isn't really that expensive.
So that makes the difference if you're trying to go through a distributor?
Yes, yes. This book is in color, and it's a little book, and because I want it so that people could go into Barnes & Noble and say, oh, I heard there's this good book on self-publishing for schools. I wanted them to be able to get it. Because of all those extra fingers in the pie, it has to be $27.99.
It's
which
called
is
overhead.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, it's lots of people getting a cut.
So what does this cost?
So what I did is I went to a grayscale. This is in black and white. and it's $12.99.
All right.
And it still has the distribution where anybody can go into a store and buy it. And what I figured out is there were a few illustrations that it was essential to have in color. Like these are pictures from Phyllis Trella's book. I helped her get that ready for publication. And if you can see, this one is horrendously red. And she took one look at that and said, oh, that's just not acceptable. This is a Native American. That is so wrong. So we figured out what the problem was, and I have explained to people in the book what the problem was. But I wanted that illustration. Well, it's available at my website, that picture.
So you can actually get it there.
Yes. So
Looking through here, though, you know, it's easy to read. It's nice.
Thank you.
And you would not expect that when you self-publish.
Yep.
Well, that's because I paid attention. And what the book explains is how to do that, how to come up with a book like that. And you can hire people, you can buy templates, but you don't have to do any of that.
Now, when you started, you talked about what you did before, you found the eras and all this kind of stuff. This way, you know that you are actually going to have someone read it.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Well, no, CreateSpace doesn't do any of that.
Really?
The only thing, well, they will if you can buy services from them, but you don't have to.
So you pay for that too. It's like a la carte.
It's a la carte. The only thing I pay for is the books I actually buy to have in hand myself. What I do is I use local people. I have a lot of very wonderful people here that will do proofreading for me for nothing but copies, which is awesome. But that's because they like my stories. The first book that I did, I just hired local people. After I found out their editor didn't really read the book, I hired local people. I went to Barb Huckabout, and she was still teaching at NPC, and I said, just, some of your students could use a little extra money. So I hired one of her students, and I hired a lady that did editing for something else, and another person. And I was happier with 3 people that were not officially editors reading through the work, and they did better. Self-publishing for schools, there's a thank you to Lori Acree, who you know, our hiker person.
Good friend.
She took a look at the manuscript before I ever had it turned into a book and came up with wonderful ideas to make it better. She was just awesome, so I owe her an edit.
And maybe she'll paint a dog picture or an animal picture for you. What is your website?
My website is SherryMcGuinn.com.
And spell McGuinn.
SherryMcGuinn.
We had this conversation before because people often mispronounce her name. You know, this is great. Today we had Ron Hildreth. We have his beautiful work right behind us. And then we had Sherry McGuinn. And now you know that you can get those very special pictures that have been enhanced in a very creative way. And also you can find out how to get your own book. It doesn't have to be vanity publishing. And you know, every month after we do the show, Steve and I definitely enjoy talking to the different people in the community, and we want to bring you people that are different, people that really know about art. So we'll be sharing some of this with you, and then I'll write about it in the Independent, so you can look for it there. And of course, right here at Sholo TV, you can go to their website, sholotv.com, and you can look and see all the different times, and I believe it's 4 different times that they strategically place, yes, I can say it, Steve, place the show so that everybody can watch it. It's even on late at night. So we want to thank you for being our guest.
Oh, thank you.
Sherry.
And don't forget, there are wonderful writers organizations up here, some of them through the Arts Alliance. There's also a writers meeting starting up out at Barbara Huckabout's at Lodestar Gardens, and there's also a writers group in Snowflake.
And we had those at the break in the show so that everybody could find out. And the Arts Alliance is located at 251 North Penrod in Sholo. And of course, everybody should join, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today on Artspace. Thank you.